Good morning. Thank you all for joining us for our October Lunch and Learn. I'm Carol Battle with the Office of State Human Resources. Today's session is on emotional eating. This is a natural part of all of our lives. Having a better understanding about the true meaning of emotional eating and how to control that behavior is a valuable tool to have. And I was actually surprised to learn that emotional eating isn't necessarily all that bad. As a reminder, everyone who's registered for this event will receive a recording of today's presentation along with the recipes. Our Wellness Webinars webpage actually houses all the past cooking demos as well as invitations to the upcoming webinars. So if you've ever missed one of our emails about signing up, you can always check our website and register there. We sponsor a Lunch and Learn every month and will continue offering these each month in 2023. At this point, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Katie Godin, from Lifestyle Medical Center. Katie's been a registered dietitian for over 15 years. She focuses on helping individuals improve their knowledge and relationship with food, and she customizes plans based on individuals' specific health goals. These include things like weight management, sports nutrition, chronic disease counseling, smoking cessation, and even concepts like sleep assessments and stress management. Lifestyle Medical Center is an in-network nutrition counseling service. For those of you enrolled in the state health plan, in-person visits are covered 100% from in-network providers. We have dietitians across the state, and to find one near you, you can log into your state health plan portal and you'll be able to search for a dietitian near you. We put the link in the chat box to both of those, how to search and also for our wellness homepage. During the presentation, please use that chat box if you have any questions. We have a panel who will be helping to answer those, and any that we're unable to answer, we'll bring up to Katie during the cooking demo. And then she will certainly offer her advice at that time. So let's start by welcoming Katie. Katie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Carol. I'm excited to be here giving a presentation on emotional eating today, a little bit of a different focus compared to a lot of the presentations I've done so far. I really enjoy this topic, though. It's something that I really enjoy working when I'm seeing a client. I really enjoy kind of getting into the behaviors around eating, or, maybe even under eating, if that's kind of how you deal with your emotions. And so we'll talk about that here in shortly. But so underneath emotional eating, it says finding kind ways to comfort, nurture, distract, and resolve your issues without food. So just to give a little background about that, so that phrase comes from Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch. They did back in the 90s, 95, I think to be exact. They developed 10 principles of intuitive eating, which is something that I enjoy, talking through with patients, the concepts behind some of those. I think that they can be really valuable. And so this is coming from one of her principles to honor feelings without using food. That's kind of how she describes, how they describe it. And so I really like that. So I wanted to throw that in there. And then of course the dog staring at those donuts just gets me. I mean, how many times do we look at something and wish we could eat it? I think it's just kind of diving deeper, learning about, okay, well, can we have things like donuts and pizza and all the things? How do we have these in our life without feeling like we don't have control? So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And Carol did a great job of just kind of giving an overview of what we do at Lifestyle. We have a blend of dietitians and clinicians that are mostly PAs who do a lot of the medical side of things to kind of take into account any, chronic diseases that you might have, or medications that you might be on, alongside the nutrition counseling that all of the dietitians do. The sky's the limit as far as what we can help you with and talk about. I know that we're a weight management focused company, but at the same time, I mean, there's lots of other things that we like to work on with people other than just focusing on weight. So, all right, well, let's get right into it. What is emotional eating? I'm sure you guys have heard the term thrown around quite a bit. Maybe, you're thinking, am I emotional eater? What does that look like to be an emotional eater? And is emotional eating a bad thing? So basically, emotional eating is eating in response to positive or negative emotions. And I also want to throw in that, sometimes individuals notice that when they're in a state of, stress, or they're going through, they're grieving, going through a loss in their family or of a loved one, they might actually not eat. And so you've got kind of the reverse going on. And so I think it's important to understand that this presentation is going to be a lot about discussing how to kind of cope with these emotions to where we're still honoring our body. We're honoring hunger. We're also respecting fullness. So we talk a lot about all of that. But I know sometimes when we think of emotional eating, we think of, getting out a bag of cookies and eating all the cookies until, to drown our emotions, but it isn't always like that. So I think one helpful tip to mention is, if you are someone that is under eating, try to set timers to remind yourself to eat. Drink protein shakes or something that's kind of easy to grab and go. But basically, working with a dietitian, and we'll get into a lot more of, what you can do to work through those emotions. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because I think it's important to note we don't always, overeat when we're in these different states of negative emotions. So anyway, what are examples? So examples would be stressful day at work. We might, even a birthday party. I mean, something like that, celebrating a promotion. When we emotionally eat, it's not always because we are sad or depressed or stressed out. And it's not always a bad thing. I mean, when we're celebrating someone's birthday, or, your husband just got promoted and you're going out to a nice dinner and you're choosing a food that you might not normally eat because you're at a fancy dinner and enjoying yourself, that's technically emotional eating. And so I think, when does it kind of, and I don't love the word bad, but when does it kind of take that turn to where it's not serving you well? It's when we're just ignoring and not respecting those physical fullness cues. Or, like I mentioned before, we're not honoring true hunger. We're ignoring those things, and we're strictly, in this state of we're not taking care of ourselves. Okay. So I think it's important that we talk about the different types of hunger. So you've maybe heard about physical hunger, of course, emotional hunger, but maybe you've not heard about taste hunger and practical hunger. So if we look at the next slide, we'll kind of get into exactly what these types of hungers embody. Okay, so physical hunger. As you can imagine, I mean, this is a physical response to, feeling hungry. Your hunger hormones are circulating in your body and they're starting to give you those cues. You might have a little bit of a tummy growl. You might kind of start to, I don't know, feel like you're a little bit sluggish, like you're just trying to think, oh, I'm kind of losing energy. I need to eat. And so usually, of course, that hunger is satisfied after you eat a well-balanced meal. But then you have, like we just talked about, emotional hunger. And this is eating for emotional reasons, or we can also throw in there avoiding food as a coping mechanism to whatever emotion that you are experiencing. So taste hunger is a little different. And we've all experienced this. So that's when you're, maybe craving a certain food or flavor, and usually that's fulfilled by satisfying the craving. So when you say, oh my goodness, I could really go for, a burger, or I could really go for a cookie right now. Or maybe someone has a piece of chocolate cake or something that's just really yummy, and you're taking a couple bites of it. You kind of notice that you don't really need any more, you're full, but just it tastes so good. So we're going to continue eating it. That's taste hunger. And then one of the types of hunger, practical hunger, that I like to work on with people, I actually did it today before this presentation. It was 10:40, and I thought, you know what, Katie, you had breakfast. I've had a busy morning. I didn't get a snack in. I knew that I was going to have my presentation until 12:30. Then I have to go pick up my son. Before I know it, it's going to be 1:30 before I can eat anything. I would have been starving. So the practical thing to do is to eat at that convenient time so that you're preparing yourself for that later hunger that is going to arise if you don't eat something. And then a lot of times, if we let ourselves get too hungry, we go overboard with the amount of food that we're eating. And so I really like for people to understand the different types of hunger. And one thing that I like to do with people in the office is, after maybe 2 or 3, sometimes I like to talk about this pretty early on with them. I want people to start practicing recognizing these types of hunger. And if we look at the next page, or sorry, the next slide, this is the hunger scale, which you will all get a copy of. What I like to recommend is putting this right on the inside of your pantry door, because we typically do not go into the refrigerator when we're looking for like munchy foods that tend to, those crunchy carbs or whatever it is that are our go-to foods when we're thinking of something that we just kind of mindlessly eat. So looking at this hunger scale, I always draw people's attentions to the middle. Okay, so the middle is kind of where you want to be. And we're not robots. We're not always going to just live in this perfect little section of the hunger scale where we're, satisfied, or beginning really 4, 5, and 6, kind of beginning to feel hungry, and then we eat to where we're satisfied or slightly full. That's the idea, to be, within these, these sections most of the time. And it's practice. This isn't a diet. This isn't okay, I'm going to follow the hunger scale for, 2 or 3 months and I'm going to lose 20 pounds. No, it doesn't work like that. This is something that has to become habitual. It has to be worked on for a long time. And so sometimes I think it just clicks, when we kind of practice it over and over. Just like anything else, when you're learning something new, you have to practice it. And so an example could be, all right, I've eaten lunch, it's an hour later, I'm bored. We kind of work from home these days, right? A little bit more than we used to, and we're constantly around food. We might walk over to the pantry, look in the pantry, the good old, like, look in the pantry, what am I going to eat? And then you think to yourself, this is where you would practice. Think to yourself, what type of hunger am I right now? A, are there any physical signs of hunger that are going on in my body right now? So let's go ahead and check that off. If you can say no, then let's move on to the next hunger. Is this an emotional hunger? And so you might talk, kind of talk through it in your head. And this gets quicker and quicker, as you get used to doing it. Like, okay, I'm not physically hungry. Okay, I think that I'm just a little overwhelmed because I got this email and now I have to do like 3 extra tasks that I wasn't prepared to do. And my go-to when I get stressed is to go grab that bag of chips and just, try to escape my problems for a minute. So you recognize that, and then that's where it's important. And we'll look at something in just a minute where we talk about coping mechanisms, because The main thing, an idea behind working through emotional eating is to work through the root cause. I mean, these are strategies to kind of become aware if you're emotionally eating. That is the first step, is you need to be aware of it. But then what, right? We want to make sure that we're dealing with the root problem. If the root problem is stress, or if the root problem is sleep, if the root problem is timing and structure. Because remember, if we wait until we're a 2 on the hunger scale, so very hungry, irritable, low energy, large amounts of stomach growling, most of the time we are going to eat until we're an 8 or a 9. And I mean, maybe even a 10, right? So I mean, the idea is the lower that you get yourself on the hunger scale, the higher the result is going to be. All right. So I just wanted to kind of go through that a little bit. So let's think about what it takes to kind of make more intentional food choices. So, okay. So tackling stress head on. That is very important. If stress is something that typically is a culprit of you, whether stress is the reason you undereat, or if stress is the reason you are ignoring fullness and overeating, that is what essentially needs to be worked on. And so when you're in our office or you're working with a dietitian, it's important that you work on structure, you work on things that are going, like setting timers so you don't forget to eat. We have strategies in place that make you think like the hunger scale a little bit more about why you're choosing to eat this food in this moment. But the ultimate thing is that we need to tackle the stress head on. So making peace with food. So maybe you guys have not heard of such a thing, right? What does making peace with food mean? So this again, and we'll talk about this kind of at the very end of the presentation. This also goes alongside the 10 principles of intuitive eating. So if someone comes in to see me and they tell me that, I've been really good, I'm not eating these foods, I don't eat pizza anymore, I don't eat brownies, I don't eat cookies, I'm being good. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? How do you view those foods? Oh, well, those foods are bad. Those are bad foods. Like, okay, I get where you're coming from. We think of foods like brownies and cookies and pizza as foods that are bad, but why? The reasons why we view them as bad is because we tend to overdo it on them. We eat too much of them when we do eat them. So let me give you a scenario. We view pizza just as pizza. Okay, we don't look at it as good or bad. It's just pizza. Okay, the food can't be good or bad. It can't have an emotion. It can't, So pizza's pizza. We have pizza with a salad for dinner. We respect our fullness, right? We feel full from the pizza. We stop eating the pizza. We've had a good fiber loaded salad alongside of it to get our vegetables in. The rest of the day, we've exercised, we've felt good in our bodies. Otherwise, we've had a lot of water. What makes pizza bad, right? It's not the pizza that's bad. It's the fact of how we view that pizza and the result of the way that we look at that pizza. Pizza's bad, so we eat it when we're off track on our diet. So we overeat it because we don't know when the next time is that we're going to be allowed to eat it. So let's just eat it and eat it until we're so full. And then we'll start over again tomorrow. So that's what I mean about making peace with food. So again, it's a lot of psychology, but I think this is really important. I think a lot of times when people come and they want to start a diet, or they want to lose 20 pounds, or whatever the reason is that they're coming in to work with a dietitian, they've never thought about stuff like this. They've never tackled emotional eating. They've never tackled their behaviors around food. And the problem is when you don't work on that piece, You're just going to consistently weight cycle, which means you're going to lose 20 pounds and then you're going to gain 25, and then you're going to lose 15 and then you're going to gain 30. And studies show that that is actually worse for your body than to just be 5 to 10 to even 15 pounds just overweight. So I think it's good to kind of talk through stuff like this. That all or none thinking, that's something that I think is important for people to work on. Kind of just like I talked about before, when we're all in it, we are doing good. Heavy air quotes around that. We're doing good. You know, so we just kind of have this one way of doing things. We can't eat pizza when we're working with a dietitian. That's not okay, right? So I want to work through that with people. Avoid skipping meals, under eating. So that kind of goes into when we're stressed out and we decide to not eat. This is where timers, I'm a huge timer pusher. If you have a phone and you or a watch, and I mean, it's amazing to just be reminded. And sometimes that's how a habit forms, is to kind of be forcefully reminded to do something. So timers can be really helpful for that. Obviously having a plan when it comes to meals and snacks. So usually when we don't have a plan, that's when we might skip or eat out, or, you know, those not so intentional choices start creeping up. So of course, that's a big part of working with a dietitian, is learning how to create these plans. Getting a good night's sleep. I can't describe how important that is. We have a clinician at our office, and I was talking with her the other day, and I just loved how she said that you need to protect sleep like it's a baby. Like, rock that little baby, hold that baby tight. Don't let anything happen to that baby. That's how you should look at sleep. And so again, you know, I think sleep, stress, these are things that constantly get pushed aside when we're making changes to our health, because we always think food is the only way of doing that, when really it is it's a small part of it. I mean, food is part of it, but there's so much more to it, and sleep is a big part of it. And then just eating without distractions. That's another, of course, really good thing to have in the back of your head when you're trying to eat more mindfully and you're trying to make more of those intentional choices. Okay. So, you know, I throw out the term non-food coping mechanisms a lot of times with people. So let's kind of backtrack to that hunger scale again. So let's pretend we're in our pantry door. We see that big old, you know, colorful hunger scale as soon as we open the door, and we're going for those chips. You know, we got that email, we got 3 extra tasks. So we open that door, we see the hunger scale, we immediately acknowledge that we are eating not because of physical hunger. This is emotional hunger. We are, you know, we're stressed, and this is what we do when we're stressed. Okay, so what do we do instead of eating? What are some things that we can try that are non-food coping mechanisms? Okay, so not everything on this list you can do in that moment. Obviously, you can't just, you know, I mean, I guess you could if you have a therapist and you want to call them real quick if you're really close with them. But, you know, some more practical things to do in the moment would be some deep breathing exercises, getting outside exercise. Even if you can't go for a run or do something that's 30 minutes long, get out and walk for 15 minutes if you have the time. Maybe you call a friend up, you chat with them, you know, and you just say, look, I'm overwhelmed right now. Maybe you have an accountability buddy. I love doing that, or having people have that for each other too when it comes to stuff like this. Accountability buddies, you know, people that you work with, you know, or just a good close friend, you know, whoever you feel comfortable with. You could kind of text them, call them, acknowledge that emotion, put it out to the universe, like, I am feeling stressed and this is why I want to eat right now. Just admit it. Some things that you can do outside of that moment that are really important are working with a therapist, a psychologist, and a registered dietitian. I can't tell you the importance of talking out your feelings when it comes to, if this is something that you struggle with, you know, there's so many people that do, and maybe you don't feel comfortable seeing a therapist. Maybe you've never seen one before and it's just a little overwhelming and just uncomfortable for you. I mean, there's things that you can do that don't require, actually seeing a therapist. So again, utilizing a friend, even just talking to someone like me, like a dietitian. I mean, just kind of letting out some things in that way can make you feel more comfortable. Journaling, writing things down. Self-care, that's so important. Go get a massage, schedule things like that for yourself. Run a bath once a week, take a yoga class. So these are some things that you can start to build slowly but surely into your life that can naturally start to help when it comes to reducing those episodes of, not respecting your body and fullness and things like that when it comes to food. Okay. So I wanted to throw this slide in just because, we put it, like when we try to put all this into practice, we kind of know what to do, but what are some of your barriers to change? This is one of the first questions that I ask people when they come and see me. I want to know it right off the bat because I want to know historically, why can't you make changes to your health? What is it? Is it because you're busy? Is it budget? Is it fatigue? Maybe you don't have a very active job, and you're just kind of can't figure out how to fit physical activity in. You're just overall kind of in that state, lethargic from just sitting a lot during the day. Maybe you don't have that overall motivation. We can kind of dig further into why that is. That's where the accountability buddy kind of comes into play. I really enjoy that for people when they're kind of someone that's demotivated. Maybe we put others first. Man, I see that a lot. Someone will come into the office and they'll say, it's just, I have 5 kids. I don't have time to take care of myself, right? And I think that's just a natural way for parents or for anyone to think, really. We're always putting something ahead of us, whether we have a family or not. It's work. It's, there's something that we're putting before us. We're never the most important thing. And then maybe it's lack of support from others. Maybe you just don't have that in your life. And, you're actually making that step to go into an office, to talk to someone who does care. Because anytime anyone walks into our office, I think you'll see pretty much right away that we really truly care about the people we see, and we are that support for them. Okay. So yeah, just a little bit more about self-care because I think that's really important. I think, again, I like this saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, take care of yourself first. It's also, of course, the whole putting your oxygen mask on before you put someone else's on so that you can help them. I mean, it's a really tough thing to do. It's a tough thing to take care of yourself. But again, dealing with emotions, dealing with stress, dealing with, the rooted issues that you tend to take out on food or your health in a negative way, these are ultimately the things that are going to matter. And so more focus on you. We like to talk about self-care. Self-care can look a lot of different ways. All right. So, I mean, intentionally moving your body every day. I'm a big fan of that. And I'm also a big fan of not pushing yourself to make movement look just one way. Movement is all types of things. Movement can be in a gym where you're really working, lifting weights, doing the things, whatever, if that's your thing. Movement can also be stretches, can be walking, can be yard work, can be, going for a walk with your dog, playing with your children. There's a lot of ways that movement can be put into every single day without meaning that you have to commit to 30 to 45 minutes of some type of organized exercise, especially if it's something you don't enjoy. That is not self-care, right? You need to enjoy it. So balanced meals and hydration. That is one thing that I also feel is really important for people to start to accept and learn how to talk to themselves when it comes to why they need to eat a certain way. Most of the time people will come into my office and they will they have this understanding that they need to eat a certain way because they need to be a certain weight. That's never going to work. If that's your motivator, that's never going to work. You're never going to successfully eat healthy and eat for you and the way that you need to eat if you're focusing on weight. Eating needs to be something that we recognize as a priority to our bodies to make us feel good. And we need to tap into that. We need to tap into this food makes me feel a certain way, not look a certain way, not make my weight a certain weight on a scale. And I think when people start to look at food that way, it really puts it into perspective. And so that's a big part of self-care, in my opinion. Better sleep hygiene, I think avoiding screens and blue lights is a really big one, but I know that's often tough. And so, because a lot of times that's how TV is self-care for some people. I will raise my hand. I know that is something I look forward to at the end of the day. When I put my kids in bed, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can watch my show. But we still have to remember that if we're sleeping poorly and sleep is tough for us, that is something that we need to protect like a baby, right? So we really need to work on that. And so maybe we're making small goals to help work through that sleep hygiene. Scheduling that time for relaxation. Every single day you need to do something for yourself. I don't care if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes. You need to do something for yourself. Decide what that is and just do it. Getting outside and just sitting in the fresh air. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous today. It's been gorgeous lately. Enjoy this weather. Take a break. Go breathe in the fresh air. If you're stuck in an office for 8 hours a day versus working from home, prioritize it. Get outside. I think that's one of the quickest ways to just completely make ourselves feel better is to breathe in fresh air. But you have to decide what that means for you. Of course, could be a bath. It could be a lot of things. Practicing gratitude for yourself and for others. I saw something the other day and it said something along the lines of the best way to make yourself feel better is to do something good for someone else. Remember that. All these things, I know you're probably thinking, wow, I wouldn't have thought about practicing gratitude as a way to help with my eating. It certainly can. It all matters. It all matters. Focusing on positivity. Work on maintaining and building connections with others. These are a lot of different ways you can focus on self-care. Okay. So I want you to think about this, okay? Let's move to the next slide, and we are going to just run through very briefly, and then I'm going to get into my cooking demo. I know I've kind of touched upon intuitive eating from the beginning. I mentioned to you about Evelyn Tribole and Elise Rush. They developed this self-care eating framework in 1995. It's a very interesting approach. It integrates instinct, emotion, rational thought. It's completely different than anything that's out there when it comes to the way that we think about food. If you are someone who has struggled with emotional eating, disordered eating, anything where food has been a very negative part of your life, I highly recommend this book. And I would love to talk to you about it. It's something that I've become a little bit more passionate about over the past couple of years. And I realized that sometimes people aren't ready to tackle intuitive eating like head on. And again, it's not a diet. Intuitive eating is a self-care eating framework. It is it is a way of doing things, a way of thinking, a way of taking care of yourself. So rejecting the diet mentality is the first principle. And I'm sending you guys, I think it was in my list of handouts to send, all the principles with kind of what they mean. But down at the bottom, you can just see the 10 principles. Reject the diet mentality. Basically, that just means that diet mentality is, a very specific way of eating for weight loss. Okay. Now that's different when someone eats a certain way. Let's just throw fasting in there, intermittent fasting. It's different when they feel better and they're driven to eat that way because of a feeling. I'm fully okay with what anyone wants to do ever when it comes to their health. You know, I am there as a support for them. But if eating to be a certain weight is the only thing that drives you, that's what I'm talking about. That we just want to work on seeing the other benefits of eating food that's good for our bodies other than just weight. Honoring your hunger, making peace with food, which we talked about both of those, challenging the food police, like, no, you can't eat that pizza. Like, oh, yes, I can. I know how to do it. You know, I don't eat 5 slices and then decide I've ruined my day and eat 10 brownies and blah, 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 right? I eat my 1 to 2 slices. I feel good from that and I move on. Respect your fullness. Discover the satisfaction factor, which is one reason why I'm making these brownies today, because I cannot live in a world where I don't eat brownies. And these are absolutely delicious brownies, and they have a lot of really good nutrients in them. Honor your feelings without using food, which is what we've talked about a lot today. Respect your body. I think this is so important. Respect your genetic blueprint. We are designed, and however you believe, you know, in whatever you believe, how you were created, but you are genetically designed to be a certain build. And I mean, I think a lot of times we need to respect that. And I think a lot of times that helps us make peace with food. That helps us to, you know, reduce the way that we overeat, undereat, whatever it may be when it comes to these negative emotions. We respect ourselves. Exercise, you know, feel how good it is for you, and then honor your health with gentle nutrition. So again, I could talk all day about intuitive eating, but I really think that I just wanted to throw a little blurb in. And you guys can, of course, read about this further if you're interested. And then, of course, if you want to, you know, work with me, like if you decide, hey, I want to set up an appointment and I want to work with Katie and I want to talk about intuitive eating a little bit more, we can do that. So, all right, guys. So we are going to make today some black bean brownies. Let me tell you about these black bean brownies. I chose brownies because brownies are a food that we think of as bad. Brownies are so bad. No, they're not. They're fine. Brownies are brownies. The way that we eat brownies and right and and what's in the brownies can matter, right? So we want to pay attention to that. I came across this recipe, which of course you guys will get. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have never made brownies with black beans in them. I have got to try this. One thing I love about them is they are gluten-free. So if you you do need to get certified gluten-free, oats would be the only thing. I don't think I don't have gluten-free oats, but everything else is gluten-free. They don't have flour, so they're going to be fudgy. So if you're not a fudgy brownie, if you're a cake brownie lover, then this maybe isn't for you, but I'm all fudgy, so I had to choose what I love best. They're absolutely delicious. And so in this recipe, okay, what I'm using to blend everything up is my Ninja, and I used this for smoothies a couple presentations ago. So I've had my Ninja for a long time. This is kind of the food processor portion of the Ninja. So basically what we're going to do is, to start, I have a cup and a half of good old black beans. What I've done is I have drained and rinsed them off, and I got low sodium. So anytime I do canned stuff, I try to get low sodium and rinse, because why not, right? It just gets a little bit of the extra salt off. So I'm going to dump those in here. And just while we're, you know, starting the recipe, are there any questions that I can kind of run through or help answer while we're doing this?
Yes, we do have a few questions.
Okay.
Hear me better. How can I control my emotions and the premeditation fear?
And the what now? And the premeditation what?
Premeditation fear. I reached back out to her to find out if she could explain that a little bit clearer, what premeditation fear means to her.
Fear, like Fear?
Yes. but I didn't hear back from her. So is that
Okay.
anything that you,
No,
sometimes she may want to
no.
consider meeting directly with a registered dietitian for that.
Yeah, I love working. I love that she brought up meditation though. Meditation is a fantastic resource for people, or practice, not resource, but practice for people. A good resource that I have for you guys, which I didn't put in the presentation, but there's the podcast that I absolutely love called Mindful in Minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kelly is her name, and she's awesome. And it's, again, it's just a free resource that she has tons of different options for people. I mean, even ones where you can do if you wake in the middle of the night to help you go back to sleep, and I mean, nothing's perfect. I mean, meditation's a practice. It's a practice that we might do on and off. It's a practice that that is in my lifestyle on and off, because I see the benefit of it almost immediately when I do it. And all you need is about 5 or 10 minutes a couple of times a day. That's a lot of the studies show about 20 minutes of meditation a day can help reduce blood pressure, which obviously is going to help with your stress response. Absolutely wonderful. So I think it's a good question. Now, the pre-meditation fear, I'm not 100% about what that really means. So having a little bit more understanding of that so I can help answer that for her might be helpful.
Okay, I anticipated that.
Yeah.
What would you suggest if we are always at the 1 or 2 or the 9 or 10, like ignoring everything in between on your chart of
Mhm.
hunger? So this person said that often she doesn't feel hungry, she just feels weak and like I need some sugar to keep going.
Mhm. I would first start to tackle structure. With anyone that's going from a 2 to a 9, I think we're going long distances without food, or we're not eating balanced enough when we eat. Okay, so we need protein, fat, and carbs at every meal to help stabilize our blood sugars. It sounds like she's having some blood sugar drops. And so I would look at time, I would look at structure, and I would look at balance of meals for that.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
good. And if somebody is interested in talking with a psychologist
Mm-hmm.
that specializes in eating disorders or
Mm-hmm.
binge eating,
Mm-hmm.
is there a link that has resources for those that specialize in that area?
What I can do is I can send an email with our list of providers, and I can also send out. Now, insurance is going to be one thing. I have to say, a lot of times when you work with specialists, especially within certain fields, disordered eating and things of that nature, it might get a little trickier with insurance coverage, but that doesn't mean that a therapist who doesn't specialize 100% in it can't be helpful to at least start with. So yes, but anyway, to answer that question, I can get over some information about therapists for people. Sure.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And we also, if you're a state employee, we have our employee assistance program
Oh,
that might be a
nice.
good
Perfect.
resource for that as well, because they will help give you a list that are in-network providers that maybe do specialize in binge eating or any sort of eating disorder.
Great.
All right, let's get on with the brownies.
Okay, so I will take more questions here in just a second. So this brownie recipe is very quick, okay? So which is also one good thing. Whenever we're making stuff like this, we want it to be fast. Well, this is fast. So we've got 1.5 cups of black beans done. Now I'm using some cocoa powder, okay? This is just a brand that I've used. I think I got it. I've had it for so long now that I can't remember. It might have been an Amazon purchase, but cocoa powder is just absolutely wonderful. It's chock full of antioxidants. So using the real stuff like this is really helpful. And we sweeten it. Don't worry. I mean, this is not sweet, but we sweeten it with some maple syrup. And I'll get into the why of the maple syrup here in a second. But I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of this cocoa powder. All right. So I'm just going to kind of dump it in. You dump all the ingredients into the food processor. Okay. And then I'm going to do a 1/2 cup of some oats. So of course we're going to add some really good fiber. And I will say, guys, I mean, this is still, and I wish that I had the carb count on this, which I can look up in just a second, but it is still going to be tough for someone who has diabetes and is trying to manage their blood sugars. So what I would say is a small portion with, you know, like after a meal, that's kind of a balanced meal versus eating it by itself. Okay. All right, so we've got our quick oats, and then we're going to do a little bit of salt, just a 1/4 teaspoon. So not too much salt, just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to dump my salt in here, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then I'm going to do a 1/2 cup of maple syrup. And maple syrup, the darker the better. You're going to have more antioxidants and nutrients in the darker versions of maple syrup. So is it the end of the world if you use a different type? No, but maple syrup is just going to give you the most health benefits when it comes to, you know, something that has sugar in it. But I mean, these are brownies, guys. These aren't, you know, they're brownies that have added healthy ingredients to them, but they're still brownies because, again, hello, satisfaction factor. I'm not going to make brownies that are just taste like cardboard. You know, I want them to still taste good, but also have some of that nutrient boost to it as well. All right, so a 1/4 cup of coconut oil. If you want it to taste coconutty, then you need to get unrefined. I love coconut flavor. All right, so this, in my opinion, tastes kind of like an almond joy brownie. Little chocolate, little coconut, right? So if you don't like coconut oil, then use the refined coconut oil, which strips a lot of the taste from it. So we're going to use a 1/4 cup of this coconut oil. So I'm just kind of, and I know we've heard lots of different things about coconut oil, so that might get a question, you know, isn't coconut oil loaded with saturated fat? Well, yeah, it does have saturated fat, but it's a plant-based source of saturated fat. So it has a different effect on our bodies. And I mean, I'm using a 1/4 cup in the entire thing of brownies, and I'm not, again, I balance my oils out. I don't just use coconut oil all the time. I use coconut oil for baking, which I don't do a ton of, to be honest. I don't do a ton of baking. So I think it's all about a balance when we're thinking about what types of oils we're using. Kind of a variety. So I'm just gonna, coconut oil is more of a solid than a liquid. So kind of mushy. All right. And then I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of the pure vanilla extract. So I have some vanilla extract here. This is 2 teaspoons. So I'm dumping that in there. I'm going to do 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. All right, so I'm just going to do 1/2 teaspoon here of baking powder. And then we're ready to blend. We're going to use chocolate chips, but I'm going to show you that in a second because you don't blend it with the chocolate chips. Get it on the right way. Guys, it's going to be loud for just a second. All right, I'm going to check it because sometimes you might need to just kind of mush everything down. It looks pretty good. I'm going to do it just one more time. Just with those oats in there, you want to make sure it gets, you know, kind of blended as best as you can. Okay, one more time. All right, that should be good. So what I'm going to do, trying to get some of this mixture off so we savor every little bit. All right. Now we have our chocolate chips. Okay, so I got Lily's. I love this Lily's brand. It does have a little bit of stevia in there, but it still has sugar. It also uses a little bit of erythritol. So it has a little less sugar than some of the others. I also got their dark chocolate because I'm a big dark chocolate person. I'm not super picky about what chocolate chips you use, really. I mean, I'm just giving you an idea of some that I like. There's also a brand called Enjoy Life. If you have a dairy allergy, that's really good too. So, all right, so we're going to use a half a cup of chocolate chips. I think that's what it said. Yep, half a cup. All right, chocolate chips down the hatch. All right. I'm going to mix this up and then I'll pour it in and let you see the mixture in the pan. Just mixing up those chocolate chips. That's all I'm doing. Okay, let me bring my pan over. Just an 8x8, you know, square baking pan. Sorry if you can't adjust my camera here. Okay, so I'm going to dump my brownie mixture in here. And guys, I think it would be really fun for someone to try this and then give it to their kids and just see what they say. My son had no clue. The only thing he knew, and I'm telling you, my son is pretty picky. He's a 10-year-old boy who loves chocolate. He had no clue there were black beans in here. The one thing he tasted was the coconut, and he said he didn't love it. He didn't love the coconut. So like, all right, well, noted. Okay. So we're gonna spread that out, and then yes, I'm going for it. An extra little handful of chocolate chips. Okay, just a little bit. Sprinkle a little bit on top. The other thing that you could do with these, all right, so there's our mixture. Okay, I'm gonna plop it in the oven on 350. Okay, so I'm gonna put it in here, 350. About 17 minutes. But of course I made some so I could show you guys. So I have them on a plate here with some fresh strawberries. So there's 9 to 12 brownies per 8x8. I'm thinking that this, oh, sorry, where are you guys? This size right here is about a serving. They're about 110 calories for that brownie. But lots of nutrients associated with it. Between the dark chocolate, the oats, the black beans. The other thing that you could do is you could add some chocolate protein powder or unflavored whey protein powder to add a little extra protein. If you wanted to just do, you know, a scoop, it would maybe give it an extra 2 to 3 grams of protein per brownie. It's not going to make them like 10 gram of protein brownies here, you know, but that's also something that you could add to these, you know, just to kind of give it a little bit more. So, questions?
Well, those certainly look yummy.
They
I'm
really
definitely
are.
trying that.
I'm not just saying it, they really are. The only thing I will say is that I did use like a really, like a good dark chocolate chip in there. So it's kind of a little more bitter. If you want just, you know, regular Not dark chocolate. I mean, that's fine too. But yeah, no, they're delicious. So especially with the a nice juicy strawberry, something like that, it's just a great way of getting and meeting the satisfaction of something that's sweet and yummy to you, but then also making it more of a balanced, healthy option too. That's going to leave your body feeling good, you know, and it makes you feel good. Oh, but side note,
Yes.
the black beans, if you're not used to eating beans, don't just, because they are good. I had two the first time I made them. I was like, oh my gosh, these are really good. And I did feel a little bloated. So I was like, oh, okay, I can feel that fiber in there. So yeah, so just to throw that in there.
All right. And is there an alternative to the coconut oil?
Yes. So you can definitely use like a canola oil or a vegetable oil if you want to. I mean, I wouldn't use like an olive oil or something like that. That might kind of be an odd taste, but yeah.
Okay. And could you tear one of those brownies apart so we can see the consistency?
Yes. Oh, where are you guys? Okay. Oh, there it is. Can you kind of see that? It's a
Yes.
fudgy. It's a little, you know, so it's definitely a fudgy inside. It's not cake-like. Yeah, they're delicious.
And the beans are already cooked, right?
Yeah, they're canned. I just got
Okay.
a can of black beans, rinsed them, drained them, and it's a little less than a can that's in there.
Okay. And was your pan oiled when you
It
put
was. I just sprayed it before the presentation I did. I sprayed it with a little cooking, spray.
Okay.
Yep.
And would it matter if you use the liquid version of coconut oil?
No, although most coconut oil is not liquid, it's harder unless you were to melt it, like put it in the microwave. But most coconut oil that you get from the store is kind of more of a gooey texture. So,
Okay.
but it wouldn't matter. I mean, no, it wouldn't matter if it were
Okay.
liquid or solid. Yeah.
So this is a good question. For looking for a shortcut, I can tell. Could I add black beans to a box brownie mix?
Yes, sure. You sure can.
Okay. And would you do that in place of the oil? Or would
No,
you? No. Okay.
no. I think it would just be an addition. It would just be an added because the beans aren't really taking place. I mean, the oil was in this recipe, the oil wasn't omitted from this recipe either. So I would
Okay.
still do the oil.
Okay. What's a good substitute for craving crunchy things, like to help with stress, besides carrots and celery?
Well, okay, so this is a good question just because I'm not super big on just ignoring the urge for that food versus and like replacement foods, but I get that sometimes. So that is something that I would want to work through for that individual is just work through why we overeat that particular food and kind of get into the deep rooted stuff there. But yes, I think it's always good to have alternative healthy snacks on hand. One of my favorite crunchy things, if you're looking at a chip or something, is I don't know if you guys have heard of they're called hip peas. They're like little cheese puffs. They're at any grocery store, specifically at Costco. If you're a Costco member, they're a big old bag. I don't have one on hand right now, and we normally do. But they are chickpea puffs, and they don't taste like chickpeas. My kids love them. They're delicious. And so if I just want to add a crunch to my meal, I like something like that, or maybe I don't know, some nuts if you wanted to have, like a trail mixy kind of thing that you've made. If you don't want to go for like that raw vegetable, that could be an option. Yeah, I mean, I think those are something, there's other healthy chips that are out there that I like to, like the Bonitos. I love those. I think it depends on what they're typically going for, what they typically like to munch on. And I might have, some other ideas based on their preferences. So,
Okay. And then
mhm.
two more quick questions.
Sure.
Intermittent fasting has led this person to eating only once a day for a couple of years now. So how do you reintroduce back to eating if you're not just hungry?
You'd have to re-stimulate those hormones, and it is possible. So what's happened is there's less circulating ghrelin, which is the hormone that stimulates your appetite. Um, and then, so that habitual and kind of consistency with times in which you eat, your body starts to produce these hormones more regularly, and then you start to become hungry. Kind of, I think if you can think through it as, a lot of times when you're a regular eater, when you eat consistently, you notice yourself getting hungry around the same time every day. So you can build that. What's happened is that person has just kind of gotten into a different way of a different type of structure for her body. So we would just start with, 2 meals a day. It depends on when she's eating as well. But yeah, I think it would be a slow build. Maybe it's a protein shake. Maybe it's something that's not heavy. Something along those lines. But yes, you're certainly able to re-stimulate those hormones again. If you're
Okay.
or you've been a faster in the past.
All right. And I guess if you use a different kind of oil, it's not going to affect the texture really, correct?
No, I mean, this recipe does mention vegetable oil. There were some substitution. I'm thinking in the recipe that's being sent out, there might be some information, a little bit more information about the substitutes that you could use for this particular recipe. But yeah, I think I would kind of stick with a vegetable oil or canola oil or something like that.
Okay, good. And then one last question. How do you get around having a sedentary job and also health conditions that keep you from walking, running, and lifting?
Yeah.
Um, I know that for a sedentary job, it's good to set a timer to make
Mhm.
yourself stand up or walk to the water
Yes.
fountain or move or whatever. But
Yes.
would this person
Definitely.
probably be a good candidate to reach out to get specific guidelines on whatever their health conditions are for preventing
Yeah,
exercise?
yes, I think it does. It takes a little bit more in-depth discussion to know exactly what to recommend, but anytime someone can get into a pool and do water stuff, I think it's great because it's such low resistance. And just remember that moving your body doesn't have to look a certain way. So I'll say that too. So if you're not able to walk and run or do strenuous activity, it doesn't mean that you can't do yoga or stretch or within the limits that you're able to do, there's always something. So yeah, so that's something that we can, of course, work through with people. And we do work with people with stuff like this all the time. Chair yoga, all kinds of stuff you can do.
Okay, great. Well, Katie, we are 3 minutes over time.
That's,
So
yeah.
just a reminder to all the participants that this will be on our wellness website. And we will also be sending you an email that includes this recipe and a copy of the presentation. This is a good one to share with all your friends and families. Just everybody seems to be dealing with some stress, so this is a good one to share with all your friends.
Yes.
Thank you
So
so
good.
much, Katie.
You're welcome. Thank you
And
guys. Have a
we
good
will
rest of
see
your
you in November.
October. Yes,
Thank
sounds
you.
good. All right. Bye.